NBA players come in all different shapes and sizes, small, big, skinny, tall, but honestly if you have skill, none of that matters. It's still interesting though to know what players were able to do, whether they're an average height or a freak of nature, so we're looking at the best current player from every height. Starting with 5'10", that height of an average US male adult, which goes to Facundo Campazzo, and as a matter of fact there's only two 5'10" players in the league today, himself and Tremont Waters. And man, these Spanish dudes are built different. Guys like him and JJ Barea aren't athletic at all compared to your average NBA player, but they're still able to make great careers. Campazzo was huge for Denver this year, and even though he's not a super athlete, he's one of those dudes that just never stops running and just outworks guys. At 5'11", DJ Augustin and Carson Edwards are the only current players that are that tall. DJ takes the spot, but this has got to be an NBA record or something. There's only 4 players in the league right now under 6 foot, and I feel like the number's never been that low. But as for DJ, not tall, not super athletic, also not a super great player, but he is the best at his height. There's a few more players in the league 6 foot tall, still the size of most of your average people, but it's brought us a lot more talent. Kemba Walker, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and 6 foot's best and Chris Paul. There's been a lot of smaller players able to make an impact in the NBA. Some did it by being super athletes, but CP's done it by just being extremely skilled. He has the leadership, ball handling, basketball IQ, and mid-range game that have mainly led the way for him during his NBA career and have excelled him to dominating over the past 15 years. And it's why he's still able to even as he's gotten older, because those qualities haven't gone away. 6'1" is where a lot more players come in, because we're approaching the ideal height for an NBA point guard, and this is the height of, a decent sized human, and it's brought us greats like Trae Young, Mike Conley, Derrick Rose, Eric Bledsoe, Lou Williams, Pat Beverly, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Terry Rozier, and Rajon Rondo. So some great and a lot of above average guards. But surprisingly, Donovan Mitchell takes this one, and I was shocked when I found out he was only 6'1". How's he going to be this dominant at shooting guard and be the size of a smaller point guard? I used to think D Wade was small at 6'3", but the fact that Donovan can do what he can while 2 inches shorter than him makes him seem that much more talented, and it makes the fact that he can dunk like he can even crazier. Now 6'2" is a weird height, not even because not many players are that tall, it's just a weird height in general. You hear people that are 6'1", people that are 6'3", but 6'2", that's not something you hear every day. But these freaks are out there because Reggie Jackson, Seth Curry, and even Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard stand that tall. And Dame's the best from this one. It's impressive. When he gets on a hot streak scoring 40 or 50, he usually gets a 6, 7, or 8 guy put on him, and the fact that he can still go is insane. At 6'3", we have most of the top point guards in the NBA, and even start to get into some shooting guards. And there's a few spread out, but for the most part, we don't see a ton of point guards over 6'3". The best of the best at this height though includes Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, De'Aaron Fox, CJ McCollum, JJ Redick, Drew Holiday, John Morant, John Wall, Jamal Murray, and Marcus Smart. So a lot of guys, but no competition still, of course, for Steph Curry. And like a lot of other players, I always see Steph Curry play and I just see him as an average person on the court sometimes. And when I'm not really paying attention, I'm just assuming he's like average height. He doesn't seem that tall when he's playing with these other players, and you don't really think about it. Then he goes over for an interview and he's like 2 feet taller than the other person. And it just reminds you how big all these guys are and how crazy it is that they can do what they can while being that tall. The height of 6'4" brings us the great Jordan Clarkson, Buddy Hield, and the best in D'Angelo Russell. His teammate Anthony Edwards was also 6'4" until he hit a growth spurt last year, and now he's 6'6". But either way, D'Lo would still take it. He's not the tallest guy around, but he is pretty tall for a point guard. 6'5" is now really the height you stop seeing your average person at, and it brings us to some of the league's best scorers in Zach LaVine, Devin Booker, and James Harden, and Harden takes it. I just find it hard to believe that they can do what they can at 6'5", while Draymond Green can also do his thing at the same height. Moving on to 6'6", it's the height of NBA GOAT Michael Jordan and legend Kobe Bryant, the ideal height for shooting guards in the league. Well, in the NBA today, this one's all over. Luka's the best from that height, and he's a point guard. We got other points like Lonzo Ball, a small forward in Jaylen Brown, and even Zion Williamson all at 6'6". These 3 guys couldn't be built any different, and their games couldn't be any further apart, but they're all somehow just as tall as each other. It just goes to show that height may give you an advantage, but it doesn't really matter in the NBA. At 6'7", there's really no competition for Kawhi Leonard. 6'7's like the tallest a person some people will ever see, but Kawhi's still got nothing on all the players ahead of him. And Leonard may be this tall, but he's still got hands of a 7-footer. For players 6'8", it goes to Paul George. I really thought there would have been more current greats at his height, but he's the best by far. Fun fact though, if you're between the heights of 6'6" and 6'8", you might think you definitely make the NBA, and your chances to do it are what, 40-50%? Well, actually there's statistically still only a 0.007% chance that happens. 6'9" is a weird height though for NBA standards. I mean, it's where you start to get into power forward and center territory. But we have a 6'9" point guard in Ben Simmons, a 6'9" small forward and LeBron James, and also a 6'9" center and Dwight Howard. I just don't get how James and Howard are the same height. At one point, they were both so dominant in such different ways, and it's just weird. But of course, James takes this one. For 6'10", it's pretty much the same thing. It's all over. You got a small forward shooter like Michael Porter Jr., a dominant player in Anthony Davis, a 260-pound big man like Andre Drummond or DeMarcus Cousins. Then there's a guy like Kevin Durant, who's just as agile as a point guard, but is as tall as an NBA center. It's why he's so unstoppable, and it really just comes down to weight that determines what kind of player you are at this size. 6'11" brings us the NBA's best center in Nikola Jokic, but at the same time gives us our best power forward with Giannis. Nikola is a 285-pound big man with no muscle definition, and Giannis is 240 and one of the more built players in the game. And reasons like this are why we're moving more and more towards positionless basketball. At 7 feet tall, we reach a new category with mainly really only big men. Now, I mentioned earlier your chances of making the league between 6'6" and 6'8". Well, the second you hit at least 7 foot tall, your chances skyrocket, and there's now a 17% chance you get into the league. As for Embiid though, there was really no competition here. Now, there's only 2 players in the league who stand at 7'1", and that's Jakob Poeltl and Rudy Gobert. And he's already abnormally large for a human, but the fact that he's got a longer reach than 7'5" Sean Bradley makes him even more of a freak of nature. He's kind of like a cheat code in that way. He's got the agility of a 7-footer, but the length and size of someone who's 7.5 feet and too big to be very agile. As we get around to 7'2" and up though, is when it gets harder and harder for players to actually compete and keep up with NBA players because they're just getting too tall. It's a struggle Bol Bol's had to deal with since coming into the league. He's very unique in that he's a 7-footer with a playstyle like a guard. It was something everyone was looking forward to seeing in the league, but up until now it just hasn't worked. He's just a little too slow to keep up with small forwards and too thin to guard big men. So for as great as his potential was, he doesn't really have a spot in the league, at least yet. There's a chance he can fix all his issues, but he's still got a long way to go, which puts him in a really tough position, and it's rough because he's had so much potential. At 7'3", Kristaps Porzingis is really a freak of nature that doesn't suffer that bad from any of those problems players of his height usually do. The only thing that really gets him are injuries. Besides that though, he's pretty quick and coordinated for a guy his size and doesn't weigh a ton so he can keep up too. One of the very few in the history of the league that have been able to do so. At 7'4", Boban Marjanovic is the only player that tall, and he does suffer from most of those previously mentioned problems. He's still the efficiency god, but it's because he doesn't play a ton because he doesn't last long and can't keep up. If he could though consistently, he'd be a monster. Then our tallest player in the league today is 7'5", and it's Taco Fall. His height's impressive, but with how athletic the league is, he probably won't be in it much longer. You'd think for somebody as big as him, he could find some sort of role in the NBA, but today especially, it rarely ever works out like that. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, and subscribe if you're new for future videos coming soon.